Welcome to today's lesson on population structure. Population structure is a key concept in population studies. It focuses on the age and sex composition of people across regions or geographic areas. In demographic studies, this is often referred to as the age sex population composition. But why is it important? Well, age and sex composition play a major role in determining the economically active population, those contributing to the labor force. It also highlights the country's demographic dividend, which is the potential economic growth resulting from a favorable age structure. Plus, it's a vital tool for shaping population policies over time. To analyze population structure, the age sex pyramid is the most effective tool. This graphical representation provides insights into the distribution of different age groups and genders within a population. Beyond that, population structure gives us a deeper understanding of the social structure, religious composition, and the spatial distribution of people. For example, it helps us know how many people belong to specific social or religious groups, the proportion of the workforce versus dependents, and the division of population in rural and urban areas. Understanding population structure is not just about numbers, it's about shaping policies, addressing inequalities, and planning for the future.
Concept of population structure. Age and sex are the two most fundamental characteristics of any population. In fact, human life begins with these two traits, while everything else is shaped by society. The age structure of a population reflects key factors of demographic change, fertility, and mortality. By analyzing it, we can understand the supply of manpower, the school-going population, and the elderly, which are critical for manpower planning. The age-sex structure is usually represented through an age-sex pyramid, constructed using population distribution in 5-year age groups for both sexes. Here's how it works. The vertical axis represents age groups and is placed at the center. The horizontal axis shows the proportion of the population. Males are plotted on the left and females on the right. Because younger populations typically outnumber older ones, the diagram forms a pyramid shape, hence the name age-sex pyramid. Now, why is this important? The age structure of a country is directly tied to its demographic transition, the shift from high fertility and mortality to low fertility and mortality. This transition shapes the population. Declining fertility leads to fewer young people. Lower mortality and longer lifespans increase the proportion of older people. The shape of the age pyramid provides valuable insights into a country's fertility and mortality trends. For example, in countries where a large proportion of the population is under 15, there is a built-in momentum for population growth. Even if each woman has only 1 or 2 children, the sheer number of women entering reproductive age will lead to a significant number of births, unless there's a sharp rise in mortality. Here's an interesting note from Srinivasan, UNFPA 2011. The age of an individual and the age of a population are different. For individuals, age refers to the number of birthdays they've completed. For example, a 25-year-old is between their 25th and 26th year of life. This is called chronological age. For populations, age refers to the average age of the population distribution, which changes over time depending on demographic trends. To sum it up, age and sex composition are the foundation of population structure, helping us understand and plan for the future. Let's now explore the significance of population structure. Sex and age are the primary variables for understanding population characteristics. According to Premi, 2011, these two factors define the reproductive potential of any society. But population structure goes far beyond just birth and death rates. It also gives insights into migration rates at any given point in time. Here's an example. In developed countries like Japan, the population structure is dominated by the elderly, with fewer young people. In contrast, countries like India have a much younger population structure. This variation in population structure is crucial for understanding societal trends. For instance, birth and mortality rates often differ by age and sex. It impacts planning for policies related to health, education, employment, and social welfare. Age composition is especially important for specific areas like reproductive age, particularly for women, health facilities for the elderly, educational opportunities for children, employment for the working age population, sports and recreational facilities for younger groups, voter demographics during elections. Sex composition also plays a vital role, particularly in healthcare policies and services. Here's an important distinction. Sex is a biological concept, while gender is a social construct. Both sex and gender matter when addressing societal needs. The inclusion of LGBTQ+ groups, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, highlights the diversity within society. Each group has unique demands and health concerns, making it essential to formulate policies that cater to their specific needs. Lastly, let's talk about the sex ratio, SR, a key component of population structure. The sex ratio is calculated as the number of females per 1,000 males. SR equals FM times 1,000. The sex ratio by age is a powerful tool to analyze migration patterns, mortality trends, and even the sex ratio at birth. In short, population structure is much more than numbers. It's the foundation for creating targeted policies, addressing societal inequalities, and ensuring everyone's needs are met.
The population census of any country is a critical source of reliable data on age and sex. However, the quality of this data often gets impacted by what is known as digit preference. What does that mean? Well, many people tend to report their ages ending in 0 or 5 more frequently than other digits. Imagine a line graph. Ages like 10, 15, 20, 25, and so on create noticeable peaks, while ages like 12, 13, or 17 don't stand out. This pattern, called age heaping, reflects how people often approximate their age during surveys. Why does this happen? Two main reasons. Mindset of respondents. Some people think of digits like 5 and 10 as good or lucky numbers, so they round off their age to these. Recording errors. In some cases, enumerators might unintentionally record data inaccurately, especially if the respondent doesn't clearly remember their exact age. Here's a real life example. Look at Aadhaar cards in India. You'll often find dates of birth like January 1st, 2001, especially for children. This default date hints at errors in reporting, where an approximate or preferred date is recorded. Thankfully, this issue is being resolved as more births happen in health centers, where certificates are issued on the spot. But back to our errors. These aren't just about rounding off numbers. Sometimes people simply don't know their age. For instance, an older person might forget their birth year. In such cases, enumerators use significant historical events to estimate ages. They might ask, were you born before or after India's independence in 1947? To measure these errors, researchers use specific indices. For example, Whipple's index focuses on the digit 0. Myers' blended index analyzes the preference for the digit 5. Other methods, like the accuracy index or smoothing techniques, help correct age distribution errors. So, to sum it up, census data on age can face challenges like selective underenumeration of infants and young adults, rounding off to attractive numbers, and deliberate misstatements of age. These errors can significantly affect population policies, so understanding and addressing them is crucial. India is the second most populous country in the world, with a significant proportion of young people. Over the past 60 years, India's population has grown steadily, unaffected by large scale events like wars, famines, or mass migration. This has resulted in a relatively undistorted age structure. In 2011, almost 37% of India's population was below 15 years, while only 6.8% was above 60 years. However, despite this youthful age structure, an important trend is emerging. The elderly population is growing faster than any other age group, while the 0 to 14 age group has shown negative growth in recent years. A critical measure here is the index of aging, the ratio of people aged 60 and above to those aged 0 to 14. Globally, Japan, Germany, and Sweden report the highest indices, while countries like Mexico and Zambia report the lowest. In India, the index has steadily increased from 18.15% in 1991 to 27.87% in 2011, showing a clear shift in age dynamics. Now, let's talk about India's age sex pyramid, which represents the population distribution across age groups. Post independence, India's pyramid had a broad base due to high birth rates and a narrow top due to low life expectancy. But with declining fertility and increasing longevity, the shape is changing. The base is shrinking and the top is widening, resulting in what's called a youth bulge, a large working age population. This youth bulge is a potential demographic dividend, an opportunity for economic growth if this population is productively employed. However, failure to create jobs could lead to youth unemployment and unrest. In urban areas, migration significantly influences the age sex structure. Young males often migrate from rural to urban areas for work, creating a male dominated urban population. Urban areas also show rapid fertility decline and increased longevity, which is reflected in their shrinking base and pronounced youth bulge. Rural areas, on the other hand, still have a wide base due to higher fertility, contributing significantly to India's population growth. Looking ahead, India's population has a high potential for growth with a broad base in the pyramid. It's estimated that it may take another 60 to 70 years for India to achieve a stationary population. The National Population Policy 2000 set 2045 as the target year for population stabilization, but it remains uncertain if this goal will be achieved. Another vital concept is the median age, which divides the population into two equal halves, 50% above and 50% below this age. As fertility declines and life expectancy rises, the median age increases. For developed regions like Germany and Japan, the median age exceeds 40 years, while in less developed regions, it's around 20 years. India's median age was 26 years in 2015, and it has steadily risen since the 1990s. Lastly, let's touch on the age ratio, a tool to evaluate the reliability of age data. It compares the population in a specific age group to the average of adjacent age groups. A ratio below 100 suggests underenumeration or errors in reporting, while a ratio above 100 suggests overrepresentation. In summary, India's population structure is evolving, shaped by declining fertility, increasing longevity, and migration patterns. The youth bulge offers immense opportunities, but challenges like unemployment and age related imbalances must be addressed. The dependency ratio. This ratio helps us understand the age structure of a population and its economic implications, particularly in terms of how different age groups depend on the working age population. The dependency ratio compares the dependent population, those below 15 years and above 60 years, with the working age population. In India, those aged 15 to 59. Some countries define the working age group as 15 to 64 years. We categorize the dependency ratio into two types. Young Age Dependency Ratio YADR refers to the proportion of the population aged below 15 that is dependent on the working age group. Old Age Dependency Ratio OADR refers to the proportion of the population aged above 60 that is dependent on the working age group. When combined, they give us the total dependency ratio. In India, we're seeing a decline in the young age dependency ratio, which means fewer children depend on working adults. However, there's a noticeable increase in old age dependency as more elderly people are living longer. But due to India's large working age population, the overall dependency ratio remains moderate. For fast growing populations like India, the young age dependency ratio is high, while the old age dependency ratio is relatively low. On the other hand, in developed countries, the old age dependency ratio is much higher because they have a larger proportion of elderly citizens. This is reflected in the index of aging, which is more than 100 in countries like Japan, Germany, and Sweden, and around 100 in the USA and France in the 1990s. Developed countries typically define aged persons as those over 65 years. And in this case, the dependency ratio is calculated as the sum of those aged 0 to 14 and 65 plus years divided by the working age population 15 to 64 years. When this definition is used, both the dependency ratio and the index of aging tend to be lower because the number of dependent elderly citizens decreases in relation to the working age group. But why does this matter? Well, when the working age population is smaller compared to the dependent population, it can limit the country's ability to save and invest in social advancements. Resources that could be used for economic development are diverted toward consumption, and unemployment may rise as more people enter the workforce without enough jobs. Also, key social processes like family formation, home purchases, job seeking, retirement, and migration are all influenced by a country's age composition. Though the proportion of senior citizens in India is smaller compared to many developed countries, the absolute number of elderly people is greater than the total population of many countries. In summary, the dependency ratio is a crucial metric for understanding the age structure and its economic implications. It helps us realize the importance of balancing the working age population with dependence to ensure social stability and economic growth. The age structure of a country's population, focusing on how different age groups are categorized and the implications these have on a nation's development. First off, the age structure of a population is often divided into 5-year age groups. It's essential to know that children under 14 years old aren't considered part of the working population. They're not allowed to participate in the workforce as child labor is prohibited in most countries. This category includes child population 0 to 14 years, child population aged 0 to 6 years, working age population, elderly and dependent population, child population 0 to 14 years. Over the last 30 years, there's been a noticeable decline in the proportion of children under 15 years, primarily due to a decline in birth rates. As of the 2011 census, India had over 37 crore children, making up 30.76% of the population. Among them, 19 crore were male and 18 crore were female. Although child labor is illegal, Around 43 lakh children aged 5 to 14 were still working in India in 2011, with more male workers than females. Child population aged 0 to 6 years. Special statistics on the 0 to 6 age group reveal a decline in this population over time. In states like Haryana, Punjab, Delhi, and Uttarakhand, the drop in the number of girls aged 0 to 6 years is notably higher compared to boys. This suggests a gender imbalance at birth, pointing to societal issues like gender preference. Working age population. In India, the working age population is defined as those between 15 to 59 years. On the global scale, it's usually considered 15 to 64 years. In 2011, India's working age population was about 73 crore, accounting for over 60% of the total population. Among them, 19%, 23 crore, are young adults, 15 to 24 years, representing a prospective job seeking group. Interestingly, the childbearing age group has also increased, which indicates population momentum. More births may occur even with declining birth rates. Aging population. As populations age, we witness a shift. The number of children decreases while the elderly population increases. In India, the elderly population, 60 plus, reached 10.38 crore in 2011, and it's rising due to increased life expectancy and better healthcare. Interestingly, female seniors outnumber males, reflecting the global trend of higher female life expectancy. While India's elderly population is small compared to developed countries, their absolute numbers are larger than the total populations of many countries, elderly in households. In Indian society, the elderly are deeply respected, both in the household and the neighborhood. Around 30% of households have at least one elderly member. Of these, 71% households have just one elderly person. Interestingly, the majority of these households with only one elderly person are in rural areas, 81%, with more elderly women than men living alone. This trend raises concerns about elderly females living alone and the challenges they face. Household heads among the elderly data also shows that female headed households among the elderly are increasing. For those aged 60 to 69, 17.4% of households are female headed, and this proportion is even higher in urban areas. Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand report a higher number of female headed households compared to northern and central Indian states like Jammu to Madhya Pradesh, where patriarchal norms often limit female leadership in households. Factors affecting age composition. The age structure is shaped by factors like fertility, mortality, migration, and historical events like wars or pandemics. India's population pyramid traditionally has a broad base, indicating a high birth rate. However, if birth and death rates decrease over time, we'll see a narrower base and steeper sides in the pyramid, signaling demographic changes. In summary, the age structure is primarily influenced by birth rates, death rates, and migration patterns, which all contribute to the overall demographic profile of a population. Now, let's move forward and look into the sex composition of the population.
Sex ratio, a tool for analyzing population composition. Sex ratio is a fundamental measure used to analyze the composition of a population. It helps understand the balance between males and females. Generally, the sex ratio at birth is about 105.5 males per 100 females. A higher birth rate is associated with a higher sex ratio, Mandal et al. 2007. Components of sex ratio in India. In India, the sex ratio is measured in several components: overall sex ratio, OSR, sex ratio, at birth, SRB, child sex ratio, CSR, elderly sex ratio, ESR1, overall sex ratio, OSR. In many countries where there is no preference for sons, the overall sex ratio tends to favor females. The world sex ratio is approximately 98 females per 100 males. Source: http statisticstimes.com. Population, countries by sex ratio. PHP. In Asia, however, many countries show a sex ratio that favors males, which skews the global sex ratio toward males. In India, the sex ratio has remained relatively low for over a century. In 1901, the sex ratio was 972, but it declined steadily, reaching a low of 926 in 1991. Since then, some improvements have been observed. Table 3.4. Understanding the dynamics of the overall sex ratio requires analyzing the child sex ratio and elderly sex ratio separately to identify the discrimination faced by females in these specific age groups. 2. Sex ratio at birth, SRB. Sex ratio at birth is a key measure to assess population quality, usually standardized to 105 males per 100 females. In most societies, males tend to have higher infant mortality rates, which helps balance the overall sex ratio in favor of females. However, in countries like India, gender-based discrimination skews the SRB as preferences for male children lead to the selective abortion of female fetuses. The Indian government has introduced several legal initiatives to combat this issue. The Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques, Regulation and Prevention of Misuse, Act 1994, and the Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques, PCPNDT, Act 1996, aim to curb the misuse of prenatal diagnostic technologies to select for male children. Despite these efforts, the SRB remains skewed in many states. In India, there has been a gradual improvement in SRB over the past 6 years, especially in urban areas. This improvement can be attributed to better access to diagnostic centers in cities, although urban areas still experience a lower SRB compared to rural areas. States such as Maharashtra, Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, and Haryana report alarmingly low SRB, while Chhattisgarh, Kerala, Karnataka, and Odisha have SRB values above the critical mark of 950 female per 1,000 male births. 3. Child sex ratio, CSR. CSR reflects gender-based discrimination after birth. It could be a result of low SRB or higher female mortality in the 0 to 6 age group. The CSR in India has been declining since independence, crossing the critical mark of 950 in 1991. This decline has continued in the decades since. The CSR is closely linked to SRB, with states like Kerala and Chhattisgarh showing healthier gender balance. 4th, elderly sex ratio, ESR. The elderly sex ratio helps understand gender dynamics among the older population, particularly as India experiences faster growth in its elderly population. Women tend to live longer than men, and this is reflected in the elderly sex ratio, which favors females. 2 factors contribute to this shift: motherhood and maternal mortality. High maternal mortality rates historically put women at risk, but once they pass reproductive age, their survival chances improve. Social changes. As women age, they tend to gain more control over household resources and decision-making, reducing gender discrimination in the later stages of life.
India's population structure presents both opportunities and challenges. With a predominantly young population, there is a potential demographic dividend. But this requires effective policies in education, skill development, and employment to fully harness its potential. As the population ages, the healthcare and social security systems must adapt to meet the needs of an increasingly elderly demographic. Addressing gender-based disparities evident in the skewed sex ratios is crucial for ensuring equitable growth. The National Population Policy aiming for stabilization by 2045, focuses on achieving a balanced age-sex structure to foster sustainable and inclusive development. I truly appreciate you taking the time to explore this topic with me. If you have any questions or thoughts on the video, feel free to drop a comment